Your health matters.
How do you define good nutrition?
Join Dr. Gerald Thompson, physician, specialist, and notable environmental conservationist, every Wednesday, 8 to 9 p.m. here on ReFM 99.9. Your health matters. Ask Dr. Thompson any burning question you have related to health. Your health matters. Dr. Thompson will examine healthcare, highlight important environmental issues, and look at what's hot in science and technology and the next wave of emerging diseases and health trends. So this and every Wednesday, join us 8 to 9 p.m. on BFM 99.9 because your health matters.
People's Pharmacy, for all your pharmaceutical, skin and body care needs. Located on Grenville Street in Kingstown. They open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday. Call them today at 784-456-1170. People's Pharmacy also stock vitamins and supplements, personal care items, toiletries, children and adult pampers, and much, much more. And of course, get your prescriptions filled by a friendly and professional pharmacist. People's Pharmacy. Come in today and let us serve you.
You one and all, happy Valentine's. You know? Matter of fact, do I have a little bit of red? I should have been fully decked out in red today. Happy Valentine's to all. This is Your Health Matters on the Day of Love. Matter of fact, I didn't connect it because the topic I'm talking about today has nothing to do with Valentine's. And maybe I should switch the topic. Maybe I should change it to something else. But remember, this is interactive. We could talk about anything. We could talk about some concern that you have. Asked me that question. I may not be able to answer it, but we'll try. And if not, we'll come back the next week and be able to try again. Remember 457-9997, WhatsApp, text, however you want to do that number, 457-9997. We'll be certainly happy to take your call. I want to say that over the weekend, I was taken aback, and I did travel up to the leeward side of the island, to Rose Hall, where there'd been an incident of a young 1-year-old child was killed, having the child's throat cut by someone who claimed that the child may have been demon possessed. And there's a whole set of other issues that arose with that. The father of the child, struck with grief, went to the house of the young man who had committed or allegedly committed the event, and stoned that house, breaking windows and doors and so. And it's really, really sad. But I had planned to have been speaking about the environment today, but I believe I have to talk about a particular subject that I have been following for many, many years. I want to talk about cocaine. I want to talk about crack cocaine. Many of you who listen, you are used to hearing comments on sugar and pressure and other illnesses, and you will say, crack cocaine, well, that has nothing to do with me. Let me change the channel. I want you to listen very carefully. And I want to also say that I remember in 1982, I just graduated as a medical doctor. And I was, for the first time in New York. Well, it was second time in New York City. And I could tell you, I started going to a lot of parties. Kamal, I landed in New York, and boy, I tell you something. I loved the rave. I loved the nightlife. It was different from London. London, everything was just on a weekend, but New York, it seemed as if it truly didn't sleep. The city that did not sleep. And I found myself out, and almost everywhere I went, there was somebody trying to push cocaine. And the individuals who were pushing the cocaine, they would strike up a conversation with you. At that time, I had a very strong British accent. I just landed. I just landed from England. So I had this British accent and so forth. And these guys were dressed in nice suits, not like a pimp, you know, a pink suit or green suit. Nice black suit with a power tie, some glasses on. People looking very nondescript, as if they're into business, or if they're lawyers, and they have a chat with you and so forth. And then somewhere along the conversation, you say, oh, you know something, I could go and do something, you know. And they want you to go out on a balcony or somewhere else in order to try cocaine. And I thought that's so strange. It was repugnant to me, but very soon I realized that was the drift. They were the pushers, they were the sellers dressed in suits, and they wanted clients. They wanted you to be addicted to cocaine so that you will keep coming back and you'll be one of their clients to buy the cocaine. Just like you go to the bakery to buy bread every other day, or you go to a store to buy your food or supermarket or whatever the case might be, and they have the right pricing, the right customer service, or you go to a particular place to buy your shoes or your clothes or whatever, and they treat you nice. And so they looked at cocaine in that form of business. And that was in the late 70s. I'm going to see how old I am, you know what I mean? But let me tell you something. I practiced medicine in New York. And by the late 80s now, a decade later, it was a completely different situation. I was no longer encountering people trying to sell cocaine. I was now encountering people using crack cocaine. So you wonder, well, cocaine is cocaine. What's the difference? Well, let me dig a little deeper into this. There is a plant that's grown in South America called a coca plant, and it produces a leaf that has certain chemicals in it. And if believe it or not, some people who live in the mountainside eat the leaves to give them more energy. But if you take the leaves and you now extract the chemical, throw away just like you're squeezing sugar cane, or you're extracting a chemical from the leaf of any kind of plant, well, they have a sophisticated process to do that. And then that extract, they're able to dry it, and the chemical that comes out can be dried into a powder, which is called cocaine. That's a simple. So cocaine, as we know it, is really like a powder. But cocaine, the whole process of making it and so forth, it can be expensive. And so people who are affluent, people who are higher in society, they might tend to use cocaine. And how it's done, it's snorted. Now I shouldn't talk about these things. I shouldn't even describe this. But let me tell you, it is, they snorted through the nose. And when powdered cocaine is done through the nose, it starts to work in about 10 to 15 minutes and gives this sense of euphoria. And so it causes all sorts of other problems. And so, but that's what it does. Now, in the late 80s, people who were ordinary individuals on the street couldn't buy cocaine. It was too expensive. So they came up with a cheaper form of cocaine called crack. And this is how it goes. Now, cocaine, it's powdered cocaine, you're able to snort it through your nose. You to sniff it up. Whereas another way of taking the cocaine is that you could inject it into your veins. Oh boy, you see some of that taking place. Or some people try to heat it, but the cocaine powder has to be heated to a temperature of almost 200 degrees, 198 degrees, in order for you to have that effect of cocaine powder. And when you heat it, you lose over 3/4 of the cocaine is burnt off. Yeah. So this cocaine is expensive, and if you try to heat it up, for some individual, it gives them a higher heights, but 3/4 of it is burnt off. So enter crack cocaine. What they did was to treat it with water and baking soda. The powdered cocaine, treat it with that. And what that does, it kind of dries it into a rock. And so you could have very small, just like on a beach in Richmond, you see little pebbles, little pieces of gravel. Less than, I'm not talking about half-inch gravel, I'm talking about very small piece of gravel. The cocaine looked like, instead of, however, being our kind of gravel where it's black or gray, it'll be almost like white or cream. And the interesting thing about the crack is that if you heat it, you only need to heat it to 98 degrees for it to vaporize. Or if you heat it, there's no loss of cocaine. 100% of it is retained. And they were able to take the cheaper form of cocaine, the more impure cocaine, and turn it into crack. So crack became available at very cheap prices. And whereas powdered cocaine took 10 to 15 minutes to act, crack cocaine takes 15 seconds to act. And within a matter of a few seconds of taking it, you are addicted for almost your life. The level of addiction to crack, the ability to addict somebody and cause addiction is so high, it's unbelievable. And I remember working in New York in emergency rooms, even having a number of patients. But one time in an emergency room, I saw somebody come in, I would call a flatliner. They came in dead. But when they come in on the monitor, their heart was not registering a beat. And we still have to go through the process of trying to resuscitate them. And every night, people coming in with a crack overdose, we couldn't resuscitate them. And the hospital I was working was called St. Mary's Hospital, just in Crown Heights, just off Flatbush Highway. And I then was told by the police there were several crack houses around the place. And I went with a group of policemen because they said they were going to try and rescue. They heard about a 14-year-old girl who was in one of these crack houses. She was addicted to crack and she was selling her body, not for money, but if you buy crack, you could have her if you share the crack with her. The crack is put into a pipe. It's heated. When you light a cigarette, the temperature goes over 100 degrees. So just by lighting a cigarette, you're able to burn the crack. And these people are able to get high. The funny thing is crack only lasts, the sensation you get only lasts about 10 minutes. But the sensation for these people is so profound that they have to keep on doing it 3-4 times a day. So an individual who is addicted to crack, they might have it in the morning, they have to have it at lunch, they have to have it for dinner, and they have to have it at night. And they don't go to sleep, and they're on it all the time. When they run out of money, they have to steal, they have to do. And she essentially was relying on being in a crack house, selling her body for crack. I remember going there, and this girl was there. They rescued her. I don't know what happened to her eventually. I start off by saying that, let me fast forward. During the pandemic, the cocaine industry, the export of cocaine slumped because all shipping lines were stopped. Ships weren't calling into ports. Right, America, come out? Airlines were not flying. You know, things were not, global trade was not working. But cocaine was still being produced. So by the end of the pandemic, there was a massive amount of cocaine on the market. But prices had now dropped. So global prices for this cocaine has dropped. And a lot of it is now turning into crack cocaine. And I want to report to you that there's been a surge in the use of crack cocaine, this rock, harder form of cocaine. And then we're now seeing cocaine invading Africa, cocaine getting into Asia, and there's a spike also here in the Caribbean. And I'm saying this program because we are seeing some of our young males, our young men, becoming involved and becoming addicted to crack. Now, cocaine, powdered cocaine, is something that's going to send up your blood pressure. It could give you a heart attack. It could cause all kinds of problems. But crack cocaine is so intense. Not only does it give you a high level of addiction, but where you crave having to repeat and get the drug again. But in a certain percentage of people, it seems that it also causes a lot of mental illnesses. It causes hallucinations. It causes delusions. It causes people to really trip off. We call this a psychosis. And they can become paranoid and they can start thinking all sorts of things. Now, in proper justice, I cannot ascribe what happened in Rose Hall to say it is due to cocaine. But I want, and I don't want it to be taken away that I am actually saying that. Maybe I might want to say that, but I can't say it because of justice and fairness to the individuals and so forth. I'm not supposed to say that. But we have been seeing a number of young men who are being enticed and induced to use crack cocaine, this cheaper form of cocaine. And it is creating a number of problems, including mental illness, where they would have delusions, where they would have all sorts of strange thoughts coming through. Thoughts like thinking a baby is possessed by demons and so forth. Now, I have pointed out to you several things here, that crack cocaine is damn well dangerous. That a group of individuals, I would say young marginalized males, typically between the age of 18 and 26, not individuals who may be in school, where teachers and so on, I'm talking people who might have left school already, but they may not have a job. They may not have a proper means of income. They may not have all the social networks around them, father figures and preachers and so forth who could guide them. They could be encouraged by peer pressure, just in the same way of drinking rum and alcohol and so, to try crack. And you've heard me say that the effects of crack causes very, very early and sudden addiction that is going to be hard to pull these individuals back into some form of normalcy, because they may be young, marginalized males that people are not necessarily studying, and they're into their own little world and so. So we have to be very careful in our communities. We have to be very careful in our communities that we don't allow this sort of situation to rise. Whether you're listening in Canada, whether you're listening in New York or Miami, or you're listening somewhere from Central America or any of the other islands, this is true of your communities too. There is a big surge in cocaine use, especially crack cocaine use. And I must say that here in St. Vincent, the police have been picking up persons with detecting that they have crack cocaine, and they have been able to even shut down a couple of places where the crack cocaine is made. We don't grow cocaine here. We don't make cocaine here. But once the cocaine comes, you're able to make the crack from it. You know what I mean? And so the crack can be made locally. And therefore, it's going to be in all impurities and different forms. And so the long and short of it is that our youth can be at some danger in this regard. And I thought it's important to bring this as a form of a public service announcement and to talk a little about it. It's not the sexiest of subjects on Valentine's Day. It's not the sexiest of subject on Valentine's Day, and I should have put it off, but I wanted to talk about this tonight, in spite of it being Valentine's Day, And I want persons to know that young black males in your community may be very vulnerable. Young black males who are your sons, your nephews, your young cousins, and so, they are very vulnerable. We have to keep an eye open for this kind of situation and make sure that it's something that does not. I'm going to go into a little more detail. Let's take a break here right now. Let's take a little break and let's get into some detail.
People's Pharmacy for all your pharmaceutical, skin, and body care needs. Located on Grenville Street in Kingstown. They open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday. Call them today at 784-456-1170. People's Pharmacy also stock vitamins and supplements, personal care items, toiletries, children and adult pampers, and much, much more. And of course, get your prescriptions filled by a friendly and professional pharmacist. People's Pharmacy. Come in today and let us serve you.
Yes. So I was once again telling you that cocaine, as people who use it, is more of a high society type drug. It's in a powdered form, and really, in order to use it, it is usually inhaled or snorted. But if you try to heat it up, apparently you're burning it off, and people consider they're wasting it. And so there's been the commencement of a shift to a cheaper version of the cocaine that's in a solid form, not powder, in little rocks that are actually easy to burn and burn at a lower temperature, and gives the individual this extreme high for some 10 minutes. And then it wears off. But the brain, the various sections of the brain that the crack cocaine affects to create this high, those centers start to say, I want more. I want more. And within a matter of a few hours, addictive behavior, what we call psychological dependency will start to emerge. And the person would start to go through all sorts of craving, feeling, sweating. Their heart start beating fast. They start getting anxiety until they're able to get another dose of the crack. And then that person's whole life is geared at trying to get more and more crack, to relive and re-experience that 10 minutes. The excess use of the cocaine in a number of people undoubtedly there's a high risk of triggering various forms of mental illness. Mental illness that's difficult to treat, difficult to get the persons back off. And in countries like St. Vincent, where we don't have a lot of drug rehabilitation centers, therefore these individuals walk the street, they walk their village, they may break into houses, they may steal from their parents, their grandparents, their whatever, and their aim on a daily basis is to satisfy their habit. And we have to make absolutely sure that this does not emerge in St. Vincent the Grenadines as a serious entity. And these young men in particular who tend to cling together, tend to hang together, because someone may want to share things with each other, and it becomes easier to identify who may be on these particular things. You got to look for a lot of erratic behavior, You know, you got to look for a lot of erratic behavior. Um, let me say that cocaine in general is going to raise people's blood pressure. It's going to increase a lot of what we call your stress hormones. It's going to increase your body temperature. Your heart rate is going to start running faster, as well as your blood pressure, I've said, is going to be higher. It can push people into erratic, violent behavior. And if too much is taken, I said it can make your heart beat faster, but it could also make your heartbeat become irregular. It can start beating so fast, instead of going beating like that, it can start to go start to get all kind of irregular beat. And there have been people, athletes, who have had heart attacks because they've had these irregular heartbeats. For people who smoke this and so forth, it could also get down into the lungs. It could worsen asthma, for sure. It could damage the lungs. People who are typical on crack can often have panic attacks, especially during the time that they don't have the drug available. So I want you to watch the situation in your young man in your home. And I hate to talk about this in terms of young men, because I'm one who feels that, you know, when we've been talking about gender, a lot of thought is given to the inequalities that take place between men and women. That is clear. That is true. But over the years, what's also been happening is some young marginalized males. I'm not talking about young males who are on the path to success, young males who are doing well and so forth in sports and in culture and in academics and getting their life together. I'm talking about some of those who have been left behind, some young marginalized males. And I want to say that I come up with a mnemonic. This mnemonic is called voids, the voids of life, the voids of youth. And Kamal, hear this, the voids of youth. These individuals are going to be prone to the first letter V, violence. And we are having a surge in crime, gun violence, and so things like that. What's the real cause of it? And then O. Well, O represents many things, you know, obstinance, overeating, all sorts of different things, you know. But the whole discipline, the lack of discipline, the lack of discipline, obsessions and obstinance in our society, especially among our youth, is the respect youth has for the elders and so forth is not there. That's O. And then I, clearly, I must mean intoxication. Our calypso artists, you see the carnival time, come out, we worship rum. Is there a calypso that's done without the mention of rum? Eh? Kamal, when you do it, how many times you have rum into your calypsos? Eh? A few times. A few times, yes. Well, Kamal says he uses it because that's what sells, right? But intoxication, there's a tremendous amount of alcohol that is taken. And then D, VOID is drugs. That's the one we're talking about. And then S is sex. Sex, whether teenage pregnancy or sexual abuse or whatever. I think we have a question here. Huh? Good night, Dr. Thompson. Good program. Do you know that people are mixing coke? Yes. And this is one of the problems, whether crack cocaine is being put into cigarettes or in high leaf, or is even put in marijuana, that this is taking place. And once again, whether it's in cigarettes, the lighting of a cigarette will raise the temperature to a certain degree. That degree, that temperature is higher than what is needed to burn the cocaine, burn the crack. And that's what's causing the problem. So that we are seeing an increase in crack usage going through the Caribbean. I tell you, it is not as great in the Caribbean, I'm talking about English-speaking Caribbean, as it is in a number of parts of the world. Let me see if I take this call. Yeah. Hello, good evening.
Hey, Dr. Thompson, good evening, my brother.
Good evening, how are you?
Host, Kamal.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I hear talk about rum, I just want to strap it up and just a little bit
Sure.
to ask something. It could take part answer.
Okay.
They talk about rum in the cemetery with when a man dead.
Yeah.
And I hear the Prime Minister say that he's going to get a bill to Parliament. And to hear, you know, that if he enemies, and I'm glad for you to carry that bill because, you know, people could turn against the government. And I want to know if that is if government business to study people business that drinking at a funeral. If that is any business, if it's not a tradition.
I can't remember.
For a long time.
I can't remember the Prime Minister saying that specifically, you know. You heard him say so? You heard somebody say he say so?
No, he come over and knew that he going to carry a bill to Parliament to stop that. I wonder if that is the Prime Minister business as a Labour man. If that is his business, I checking one day they call in and talk about that. and he going to carry that to Parliament to make enemies against his own self.
Yes. Well,
so
let me say. Thank you very much. The experience with alcohol is very funny. In 1922, America banned alcohol, call it prohibition, a period of prohibition. And they had prohibition for 8 years up until 1930. And the people who wanted the prohibition said, if we ban alcohol, therefore the men will end up going to church. And the factories that make alcohol, we could turn them into factories that make food, and that men would be much more obedient and stick with their wives, and the children will see their fathers more rather than the men being in rum shops and so forth and things like that. And that was the thinking by banning alcohol. But during those 8 years, crime went through the roof. There was so much corruption. There was places called speakeasy, underground places where people went to drink. That's when Al Capone and Buster Keaton and all those mobsters that we've heard about came out. And eventually, America had to abandon the prohibition on alcohol in 1930. And afterwards, people celebrated by getting drunk. There are many countries in the world, those in Saudi Arabia and all the places, boy, you can't be drinking. Still country, you know. But in truth, alcohol is one of the most dangerous drugs out. I don't think people realize the amount of liver damage that's been done from alcohol. And because these things take place so slowly over a period of many years, we don't see it. Someone who falls down and break a leg, we say, well, boy, you know, I fall down and break a leg. But when you break your liver over 15 years of hard rum drinking, whatever the other beverage is, and all the other effects. I mean, I tell you something, I could go down a list of diseases alcohol causes. And the thing about it is that there may be nothing wrong in having a drink every now and again. Clearly, it is the excessive drinking that takes place, just like we talk about crack cocaine, but certainly not in the same way. Some people become addicted to the alcohol. And it's a serious issue. I don't think from a social point of view, we will be able to create prohibition. I suppose it's that if you're going to drink, you drink elsewhere. Maybe drinking in a cemetery and drinking around the grave, and we have a carcass struggle and throw it on top of the coffin and all that kind of thing. I'm not sure what the ritual is, and dancing around the grave, Some people may be offended by it because the thing, but I don't think a bill is going to go to Parliament to do that. And I'm not saying it won't go because of political reasons. I'm saying that there's a lot more that has to be done in terms of reducing the high level of consumption. I've been teasing Kamal about around Carnival time, rum this and rum, and we celebrate the rum, and people have their bottle, and it's like more important than a partner to dance with. You know what I mean? You got your rum and that's it. So that's very interesting. So I've always, as a medical doctor, realized that having one drink is not a problem. And I have to say that because studies have been done. Having one drink is not a problem. It's been revised. You can have about 2 drinks a week, right? But it's when you start consuming alcohol on multiple occasions, on a daily basis, you really may be alcoholic. And the impact it's having may not be just on you, but if you are a driver, if you are a person who operates some heavy equipment, you could put other people's lives in danger too. So it's not a complex issue that alcohol is thing. And so I see that as being one of the voices. And a lot of our young people are being exposed to intoxication very early. It becomes almost like a rite of passage. It's okay to get drunk, especially at carnival time. Man, behave bad, get on bad, get on wassy, you know what I mean? And all the different terms that we use and so forth. And I must admit, I've done so too. You said? I must admit I've done so too. It's a bit hypocritical. I remember when I was 17, 18, having my pouch, and the things I had in my pouch, I had a leather pouch, Kamal, and for carnival, and you know what I mean. I was drinking, and it seemed as if it was the right thing to do. Now, luckily, after carnival was finished, I didn't continue walking around with the pouch. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? That was just the Monday and Tuesday I had the pouch. You know what I'm saying? But I must admit that, because if I try to give an impression, somebody would come and say, "Doc, I remember you, and you're a liar." You know what I mean? And so, but I soon learned that from observation of other people that I saw dying early, and saw other people that, as a medical doctor, when I went to autopsies and I saw their liver had shriveled up. Their liver has shrunken up. You know what I mean? To half the size, because they had cirrhosis of the liver. That some of these persons, their liver couldn't get rid of the toxic substances that normally form in your body. So the toxic substances build up in their blood, and they start to see little men. Have you heard that term before? People start to see little men, and these people don't die very nice deaths. They die a very sordid, pitiful death, but they do eventually die early. So I want to really say that certain measures have to be made in terms of, I don't think banning alcohol and so forth will be the thing. We just got to really do a lot more public education and so in that regard. But what's worse than alcohol is crack. Let me get back at that. I don't think people realize it, you know? And really, once you find yourself a crack, you slide down that pit, that social ladder, because you're just not concerned about all the hygienic things that you have normally been focused on. Your brain is telling you it needs another 10 minutes of crack. And I had to do this evening because, yes, I'm going back. I'm linking it to some extent of what happened in Rose Hall. But there are far more young people, young men, who are using this. And they too can find themselves with delusions, with mental illness, sliding down the social ladder, being marginalized and being lost to society. And we got to pull them back. We got to find a way of pulling them back, you know? And I'm going to be making some efforts in this regard, you know, and clearly there are going to be some persons who are going to end up, because of their level of addiction, doing some very intensive use, and then the loss of their physical health. They then having deep levels of dependency on the crack and finding themselves in all kind of negative social situation. So this is something that we have to address in our society. And if in your community that you see some young, the approach that's been coming out of the United Nations, we should not discriminate against these individuals. We should not try and marginalize these individuals. We shouldn't try and label them as maddies, or as to say that they're mentally ill, maddies, or just label as crackheads and so forth. We basically have to find a way to make sure there are not more of them. And we have to try and marginalize. Was there any other questions? So? What came before was something different, was it? Yes. Okay. Yes. Good night, Dr. Thompson, and come. Blessed Ash Wednesday and Lent season to all. This is it, right? Yes. Yes. Dr. Thompson attending and listening to some funerals. You will hear some anti-vax church leaders in their sermon saying that the person died because they took the vaccine. So I'm wondering, all those who didn't, what are they dying from? You know, I'll tell you something. It's interesting, yes. We normally would have skipped this. But there are only a few preachers who still do this. These are ones who had predicted and suggested that people should not take the vaccine. But we're now past the vaccine. We went past the vaccine. We went through a volcanic eruption. We've gone through other economic issues, and we're now really on a path to recovery. And it's fascinating. I'm looking at some pictures of sandals. I took a picture today of 3 ships in the harbor, 2 cruise ships and a massive sail yacht. You saw that come out? Huh? 3 cruise vessels were in the harbor today, and I was so proud to see 3, and the plans that they have when the new port is finished to turn the old Kingstown port into another cruise terminal. So you can imagine 4 or 5 cruise ships landing in Kingstown Harbor. Ooh, that's interesting. You know, that'd be interesting. I wonder if we have enough taxis, if we have buses, we have that. But some people are still talking and living in the past, talking about the pandemic. I could talk about the pandemic all the time, but I wouldn't say we've conquered the pandemic, but we've overcome it. You know, we had the lowest numbers of deaths in St. Vincent based on the approach. We may not have gotten 70% of people vaccinated, but we ended up getting close to about 50, 55, which was turned out to be sufficient, you know what I'm saying? And we couldn't stay at 15, 20%, because then there would be problems. But the important thing is that we're over it. And some people will talk about it. The vaccines were never designed to give people immortality. So once you take the vaccine, you'll never die. Never. That was never the case. People who take the vaccine could get run over by a car. They could get into a car accident. They could forget to take their blood pressure medication and get a stroke and die. They could overeat and their sugar goes up and all sorts of things. They could develop cancer and so forth. But certainly the vaccine was never designed for creating immortality. The vaccine was designed to get us over the pandemic hump, right? And since then, we've had other viral illnesses, other forms of influenza, the flu, influenza A, influenza B. In other countries, they've been having dengue, they've been having other things like that. And life will go on as we face it. The public health department has to alert people of what dangers are out there, and eventually, hopefully, enough of us, the majority of us, will respond to those calls and help to prevent the spread of disease. We should never be persuaded by people that don't believe anything your doctor says or the health authorities say. Don't believe what Dr. Thompson say. Just take turmeric and ginger. I want to encourage people to take turmeric and ginger. I'm an advocate. Gerald Thompson drinks turmeric and ginger from time to time. I can make turmeric and ginger, but truthfully, I'm going to tell you honest truth. I was in Jamaica the other day, and guess what I bought from Jamaica? A packet of turmeric and ginger tea. And so so somebody may criticize me, Doc, you eat in Jamaica turmeric and ginger when we have turmeric and ginger here? Yes, it's true. But convenience, I like popping that into a glass. And so I drink turmeric and ginger. Everybody, nothing wrong with doing that and a couple other things you want to add to it. They're all good. They're all good. I'll do a program on those. That's all. But Whether that's going to make me immortal and keep me from any illness, that's not the case, right? And I want persons to understand that. And some of these things are good, very, very positive, but that's not all that's required to sustain life. So that's an interesting statement. I want everybody to please try and reach out to the young males in your community, the young marginalized males. They are often forgotten. They are often forgotten. And they really can be tricky and difficult to deal with, and so from time to time, yes. But collectively, if we keep an eye open on them, we can help pull people back from crack use and excessive alcohol, and whether you drink alcohol in the cemetery or you drink alcohol in the home. And you know, the most alcoholics are people who have a bottle under their bed or under their pillow or something. So, and I believe that we can do a lot more in terms of not only promoting health, but promoting the social cohesion that's required for life. Ladies and gentlemen, I've come to the end of the program. And it's unfortunate that on Valentine's, I've been talking about crack. But there's no bad time to talk about these things. No time that's too good. So let me bid you a very pleasant good evening and good night. Do have a wonderful
People's Pharmacy, for all your pharmaceutical, skin and body care needs. Located on Grenville Street in Kingstown. They open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday. Call them today at 784-456-1170. People's Pharmacy also stock vitamins and supplements, personal care items, toiletries, children and adult pampers, and much, much more. And of course, get your prescriptions filled by a friendly and professional pharmacist. People's Pharmacy. Come in today and let us serve you.
Life is meant to be an open celebration, not enslavement to addictions, human traditions, or mediocrity. Are you living abundantly?
Health of our society, the future and health of our homes depend largely on how we do what God expects us to do.
Join Dr. Claudius Davis on the Full and Abundant Life program here on WeFM 99.